Okay, let's do this. All right. A couple of months ago, I put out a video here on my channel in which I talked about ways in which we can improve our discernment and why it is important for us to do so. So today, I'm going to kind of continue in this same vein. It's important that we understand critical reasoning, how to engage in critical reasoning, but how is it that we can improve our critical reasoning skills? So, one of the things that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about reading. Now, this is not a new topic to me. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to bring it up. Now, some of you who are big readers, you will probably think that, does this really bear, you know, does this require an entire video? Or maybe you're a big reader and you think, hey, this does require a video because a lot of people out there don't read. If you're not a reader, then you probably think that this video is unnecessary, but I don't know. You might be who this video is geared towards. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about reading, the importance of reading, and then kind of the links between reading and critical reasoning or discernment. Okay. So, in the discernment video, I talked about reading and I mentioned how one of the ways in which you can sharpen your discernment skills is by reading from a variety of sources, sources that come from all over the world, perhaps even in different languages. And I talked about how a lot of people today don't even have the intellectual stamina to read through a book. And that wasn't the first time that I've said that. I've said that, I don't know, for the last couple of years, and I stand by that assertion. Many people, particularly in the United States, but probably elsewhere as well, lack the intellectual stamina to read a book, fiction or nonfiction, but particularly nonfiction, right? So, anyway, we're just going to talk about why it's important to read and specifically why it's important to read books. All right. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a Substack that I wrote. Actually, two Substacks. We're going to read part of both of them. And they both were written in 2023. The first in April of 2023 and the second in August of 2023. So the first one on my Substack, published April 27th, 2023, is entitled People Can't Read. All right. Very simple, very in your face title. Okay, so I'm reading now from this piece. People can't read. Not only is that the title, it's also the first line of the piece. People can't read. You might argue with me by pointing to all the people around you who are, in fact, literate. I would concede to you that many people are, in fact, literate, but I would hold to my originally stated claim that many people can't read. Attrition is murky, but Mark Twain is credited with stating that a person who won't read has no advantage over one who can't read. You and I both might fully agree with this dictum, but you would still state that even Twain, or whomever originally made the statement, is making a clear distinction between those who can't read and those who won't read. So let me clarify the point. Many people can't read a book. They can't. They have lost the ability. It's not that they don't possess the ability to read words. They know the alphabet. They can understand words and sentences. However, they no longer possess the ability to read a full book. They can't make it through a damn book. They may try, but they no longer have the intellectual discipline and stamina to make it through. Let's face it. If you can't read a book, then you can't read. I'm not necessarily talking about the person who reads multiple books at once and has trouble finishing a book before starting another one. I am such a person. While this problem could also be one of reading discipline, of which I stand guilty, it's hardly the case with these individuals that they can't make it through a book. Arguably, this could be a problem of reading too much, at least in terms of trying to read too much at once. Also, I think there's a case to be made for deliberately discontinuing a book once the reader has determined that the value of the book does not exceed the value of the time and effort put into reading it. Nothing wrong with making that determination and moving to another, more valuable book. I'm referring here to those who seemingly have no ability to read a book at all. Perhaps they once had it when they were in high school or college, but they have somehow lost the ability. It's as if reading a book is a task they are incapable of performing, regardless of the ability they may have once had. Anecdotally, I can point to the time I challenged a good buddy of mine, who shall remain nameless, to read a certain book by the end of last year. I think I extended the challenge to him in August. The book I had asked him to read was not an easy read, but he had already expressed interest in reading it, and I had given him a copy. After repeatedly urging him to read it, I offered him $500 to read the entire book by the end of the year. At no time did I feel that my money was in danger. But yes, I absolutely would have paid him if he had read it. However, I knew there was literally zero chance he would read the book. Why? Because he was incapable of it. If he reads this book, or if he reads this, since it isn't in a book, he will probably laugh rather than get angry, and he'll have to admit, I'm right. If you haven't read a book in a long time, it will seem like an extremely daunting task. Sentences are more than the sum of their words. A paragraph is more than the sum of its sentences. A page is more than the sum of its paragraphs. And a book is more than the sum of its pages. You get the point. This is certainly true with fiction that clearly and strongly invokes the reader's imagination. The images created by the reader in his mind are not explicitly found on the page of the book, unless the book is illustrated, friend. The reader creates those via inspiration that comes from the deliberate assortment of letters into words and words into sentences, etc. However, even nonfiction writing is creative in a certain sense and also invokes the imagination as well. Reading a blog or even a short article is much different than reading a book. A book, particularly a nonfiction work, typically makes a long-form argument. It requires intellectual patience to follow the author's argument, understand its premises, weigh the stated claims, and then accept or reject the conclusion. This can't exactly be replicated in short-form content. The amount of data, evidence, and the format of the argumentation can't be included in the same way in these other media of communication. I'm not in any way discrediting blogs, articles, or even tweets. They all have their place, but books also have their place, and even a million tweets aren't collectively the same as a book. Why do many adults shun the practice of reading books? When looking at just how few adults read, the numbers are troubling, and we'll look into some of that here in a moment. And I do give like a linked article here. This is madness. It spells massive problems for us individually, for those who can't read books, and collectively as a society. We wonder why our nation is crumbling before our very eyes. There are many reasons for this, but one of the most significant reasons is that people lack the critical reasoning faculties needed to support proper and appropriate decision-making. One of the main reasons that most people suck at these significant meta decisions, the decisions about decisions that determine the future of our nations, our lives, and the fate of the next generation, is because they have an extremely impaired ability to think critically, rationally, and logically. Without exception, the people I personally know who are the most skilled in terms of their strategic thinking, analytical capabilities, and overall intellectual depth are avid readers. If that's not you, there is hope. It will require work, though. Deficiencies don't correct themselves with no effort. Luckily, the inability to read can correct itself. In this case, the problem is the cure. Start simply and develop a plan to slowly make the way through a book that will most easily hold your attention, regardless of genre or length of book. Start with something easy that you can exercise your reading muscles with, then gradually read more advanced books. After all, if you can't read a book, then you probably need to go read a book. All right, so that was the end of the first piece that I wanted to go over. All right, let me go to the next one. I'm going to read part of this, and then we'll look at some statistics. Okay. All right. So the second piece here is called Reading Books, Seeking to Revive a Lost Art. And this I wrote 4 months after I wrote the one that I just read. So this is from August 14th, 2023. Why do so few people read these days? Oh, by the way, I said the title of this one already. Reading Books, Seeking to Revive a Lost Art. All right. Why do so few people read these days? And for those who do read, why don't they read substantial material? My principal claim is that most people, all right, so what, all right, I'm already screwed up here. Okay. Why do so few people read these days? And for those who do read, why don't they read substantial material? Recently, I wrote a piece that I called People Can't Read, linked below. That's the piece that I just read. My principal claim in that post, meaning the piece that I just read, was that many people today can't read. It's not just that they won't, it's also that they can't. I'm not saying they are completely illiterate. I'm merely saying that they have lost the ability to read any material that requires substantial intellectual energy. This is a problem. I think there is a clear parallel between societies that don't read and those that are more easily controlled. Why? Societies with less informed populations tend to have a less sophisticated and accurate collective worldview. That leaves them more susceptible to propaganda and manipulation. I wish that we as a society could crack the code on how to instill the desire to read in more people. How do we revive this lost art? I've always been a big reader. However, years ago, I began to do more of my reading on digital platforms. It became easier to purchase the digital version of the books. It seemed to solve the space issue of where to store print copies of books. It also solved the portability issue. It's not hard to carry a book or two if you travel, but with digital copies, you can carry hundreds of books as easily as you can carry one. That said, around 2017, I reversed this trend and almost exclusively began reading hard copies of books once again. Personally, I prefer to take notes in print books, and I feel it facilitates my retention of what I read. However, there's another reason as well. When book burning returns, and it will, we've already been in the vortex of massive censorship campaigns as it is, destroying the digital copies of books will be the easiest to perform. It's easy to digitally erase a book. It's also easy to make modifications to books that exist on digital platforms. I'm not the first to realize this vulnerability of digital books. Now, let me stop right there. Understand how easily that could happen. To take a well-known book, make seemingly insignificant modifications to the book that, though subtle in design, may make a world of difference in terms of the meaning of certain passages of these books. But if you were to do that in every digital copy of whatever book, well, who would catch it? Who would catch that you have now perhaps substantially changed the meaning of what an author was saying? Well, the only people who would catch it would be those who actually had the print copies of the books. And if those no longer existed, then nobody would catch it. All right. Okay, so it's easiest to digitally erase a book. It's also easy to make modifications to books that exist on digital platforms. I'm not the first to realize this vulnerability of digital books. But to burn an actual book, for example, that is sitting on my bookshelf in the study of my house, someone has to forcibly seize the book and destroy it, and then do the exact same to every other copy of the same book just to eradicate a single text. Regardless of the medium that people use to read, I want to encourage people to do more of it. If people prefer to read on an electronic device, at least they're reading. If people prefer to listen to audiobooks, at least they're consuming the information. That's far more than what most people do these days. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. and I'm going to go over and I'm going to look at, there was in the first piece that I read, there was something that I had hyperlinked in, and I'm going to just look at that right now. So this is an article. I'll put the link to it in the description to the video, but it says over 50% of Americans haven't read a book in the past year. This is from a 2022 study. We surveyed 2003 American adults in order to better understand the reading habits of Americans in 2022. All right. As a non-commercial research organization that seeks to be the #1 data source on all things reading and books, Words Rated, which is this website, wanted to rectify the shortcomings of the many industry-leading reports. All right, so we're going to go down here. All right, what are the key findings of this survey they did? More than half of adults, 51.57%, haven't read a full book in over a year. 22.01% of adults haven't read a book in over 3 years, and 10.83% haven't read a book in more than 10 years. Okay, let's just stop right there. All right, more than half of adults haven't read a book in over a year. If that's you, you suck. 22% of adults haven't read a single book in over 3 years, and 10%, 10.83% to be exact, haven't read a book in more than 10 years. So I just said you suck if you haven't read a single book in over a year. If you haven't read a book in over 3 years or 10 years, then I'm talking to you when I say you can't read. You can't read. They mention here the one book rule. Finishing one book is all it takes to start a reading habit. 28.76% of people never finish a book they start reading, but those that finish one book are 29 times more likely to read at least one more. Well, there you go. All right, so the problem is the cure. You can't read. Start reading, and you will get better at reading. Pick a book that can most easily hold your attention, like I mentioned in the one piece that I read. Okay. All right, let's go to, here's another piece here. So reading statistics. This is from a website called mastermindbehavior.com. I'll put the link down below. All right, so current reading trends in the United States. All right, what does it say here? Only 32% of the US population reads books for pleasure. Reports have shown that only 48.5% of adults read at least one book in the past year. Okay, that's a little bit different than the statistics that we read in the previous one. Actually, it's about right? Pretty similar. Yeah, I guess it is about right. Yeah. So they said 51, they basically said 51.5% had not read a book in a year. This says 48.5% have read a book in the year. That, yeah, so they're pretty much looking at the same statistics. So this says 48.5% of adults read at least one book in the past year, down from 52.7% 5 years earlier. So it dropped 4 percentage points in 5 years. The average American manages to read only about 12 books annually, a figure that has seen a noticeable decline over time. I seriously question that statistic. I find it hard to believe that the average American is reading 12 books a year. That would be a book a month. I don't think the average American is reading a book a month. But anyway, they compiled the statistics. You guys let me know in the comments if you think that's true. I don't have any data to counter it. I'm just going off of just what I see. And I don't, I hang out with some very smart people that do read a lot, but I also have plenty of friends and family who certainly do not. Okay, let's see. So a higher percentage of women read compared to men. Yeah, that's probably true. Let's see what else. Only 32% of the US population reads books for pleasure. I think we mentioned that already. 42% of college graduates reported never reading another book after completing their education. I think that is the most alarming statistic. 42% of college graduates reported never reading another book after completing their education. You know what that tells me? Reading was never important to you to begin with. I got it. People are going to, I'm busy. Oh, life. Oh, whatever. Whatever. You can't read. Yeah. So here we go. Okay. Reading offers numerous benefits, including stress reduction. Just 6 minutes of reading can lower stress levels by 68%. It can also improve vocabulary, writing skills, and mental focus, thereby enhancing overall cognitive abilities. Children exposed to reading frequently at home tend to have higher success rates in school, reinforcing the idea that encouraging reading from an early age can have lasting positive effects. Okay. All right. There's some other stuff that is interesting here. So, like I said, I will give you the link. You can read through this if you want. I do just want to mention so US and global reading trends, reading habits and literacy rates differ significantly between the US and other parts of the world. The US has faced a decline in leisure reading. As of 2023, only 54% reported reading a book, a stark contrast to countries in the European Union, where nations like Luxembourg boast reading rates of around 75%. Globally, literacy rates vary, with the EU reporting around 52.8% of people aged 16 and over reading books annually. Concerningly, 45 million Americans are functionally illiterate, unable to read above a fifth grade level. Yeah, okay. All right. So, in summation here, I just wanted to share that with you guys because I think if we as a nation are going to get out of the situation that we're in, we have to collectively have better discernment. We have to exercise critical thinking. So how can you build your critical reasoning faculties if you can't even read? If you can't read a book, and again, like I said in what I shared with you from my Substacks, there's a difference in even a scholarly article, which most Americans aren't reading. But even if you were to read a scholarly article, which would require some attention, and many of those can actually be quite dense for sure. But again, even that is different than a book because the type of argumentation is different because of the depth that the book is going to cover. All right. So if you are reading, then I encourage you to continue to read, and my aim here in this video is not to talk about what you're reading, etc., except to, hey, let's read more books as opposed to other things that aren't books. Not that they don't have their place, as I said. If you want to know kind of with more granularity what I've said in terms of reading and discernment, go check out my discernment video. Here, I just want to encourage people to read. And if you don't read, then yeah, I'm calling you out. I'm calling you out. You are the problem. Okay, you are the problem. And yes, I do think there is a direct link to people who read and can read and people who can make better decisions and can think strategically and are less apt to be manipulated. Now, that's not always a perfect correlation. There are people out there who read, but they read a lot of trash. Okay, that's not going to be super helpful, but at least they're reading. Give credit where it's due, right? Here's the other thing. People who read one book on a topic, they'll read one book on a niche topic, and then it totally changes their opinion on it. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But what if you were to read another book from a different perspective on the same topic? So, anyway, but again, at least people are reading, but we should be reading from a variety of opinions, from a variety of perspectives. If there's a niche topic that interests you or that is important, then you're going to have to read multiple books about it. Because if you just read one book, then you're taking that author, you're just assuming that author understands everything better than all the other authors with different opinions and different conclusions that have written about the same idea. And perhaps you just happen to find the one book that approaches that topic most thoroughly and most accurately, but chances are you probably need to read other books about it as well. So anyway, if you struggle to read, like if you know that that's you, then just train yourself to read. Pick up a book, an easy book, a simple book, a short book about a topic that interests you, a genre that you find interesting enough to stick with it. And if it's a work of fiction, great, no problem. We should be reading fiction. Okay. There's a lot we can learn from nonfiction, but a lot of that can be complemented by also reading quality fiction. So, all right, I'm going to get off of here and I'm going to go read a book. And you should do the same. If you are reading right now, then yeah, let me know. Let me know a book that you are reading right now. I'd love to know what you guys are reading. Um, yeah, let me know in the chat if there's a particular book that you're reading that you want to tell us about. Now, I will tell you guys. So, because if I'm going to ask you to do that, then I'll tell you a book that I'll tell you one that I just finished. So I just finished the book, The Spy Who Came from the Cold. Why? Because I've been recommending this book and I'm going to do a video on it. I have read this book in the past. I read it, I think in probably 2017 or 2018. But I found myself recommending it to people. And so I was like, I need to go through and read that book again. So I will do a video on that, but that's a book that I just read. I just finished it. Um, there's some other books I'm currently working on too. I am one of those individuals who reads multiple books at once. So anyway, yeah, you guys, appreciate you sticking around. Like and share the video, and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to tell me what you're reading in the comments, then yeah, let me know below. And if you have a book that you would like to recommend that you think would be helpful for others, and maybe a lot of people don't necessarily know about it, then yeah, give us your recommendations down below. All right, thanks.